Hi! Hello, most amazing fam. What's up? This video is by Abs Names, and no, that is not the name of a motivational fitness podcast.
Although we hope it to be one day.
Yeah, one day.
It's not.
No, not right now.
Anytime soon.
But anyways, hi, I'm Abby.
I'm Eamon.
And today we are bringing you, can we say it at the same time?
Yeah, let's say it at the same time.
Top 10 scary hospital horror stories. The only time I've ever been admitted to a hospital, I don't remember at all.
Really?
Because I had a severe concussion and full-on amnesia.
What happened?
I played rugby in grade 9 and I just got like a knee.
Sporty one.
You know, I'm just jacked, obviously. And yeah, I got a knee to the back of my head. So.
Oh my god. Okay, I've been admitted once because I have asthma, and like when I was young I really liked just puffing. And so like I went behind a door, like I ran away from my parents, went behind this door, just started puffing and then passed the hell out. My parents were like, okay, take her to the hospital. And I was like, hi.
That's just OG Vape Nation.
Yeah, Vape Nation, what can I say?
That's aiming for it. But anyways, we'll get into it with the top 10 scary horror stories. Alright, at number 10 we have a mass hallucination. This one was posted by a nurse that goes by RN_waitress on Reddit. During a 2012 outbreak of fungal meningitis, the acute care floor she was working on had at least 10 to 15 meningitis patients. The floor itself has a capacity of 20. Many of these meningitis patients were having the same hallucinations. The nurse wrote on Reddit that they experienced children in the corners of their rooms and auditory hallucinations of religious music. Now, if you think this was a prank being played by sick patients, then think again. All of the patients were in isolation with no shared rooms and no communication between one another. So what do you think caused it? Specific parts of the brain the fungal infection was affecting, or was it something else?
Coming in at number 9 is the bloodbath. Now this one is gruesome and shared by a user called Paravel. So they shared that they were working their regular night shift in a bone marrow transplant unit with another nurse. They had 5 patients, and as the other nurse was coming out of room 4, she shared that the patient in there had died a very gruesome death. He was slated and approved to go home, but that same night, the nurses heard the sound of someone falling. They went in to check on him and saw nothing but blood. The man had pulled out his own central line, and there was blood everywhere, like it was a bloodbath, Game of Thrones Red Wedding style. He died right there and then, and no one knew why he did it. He was literally free to go. But get this, a few weeks later, a little old lady gets moved into that same room, and she asks if anyone had died in there. The nurse brushed it off, saying people die in the hospital all the time, but the old lady replied by saying, no, I think a young guy died in here because he's talking to me right now. Now this woman also has a central line, and later that night, the nurse goes in to check on her. Again, an utter bloodbath. Her central line had been cut. Not pulled like the other guy, it was proper cut. There was no scissors in the room, and all the lady said was he did it. Right, enough of that.
Next at number 8, we have false hope. This one comes from an ER nurse who spoke from a now deleted account on Reddit. She had an old lady stay in the ER overnight that was near death. They saw the signs: irregular breath, barely responsive, pale and cool, so they turned the lights down and kept an eye on her monitor. They searched and couldn't find any family, and then on top of that, she was a DNR, do not resuscitate. So the writer says they were basically waiting for her to die. She was close. And then, an hour later, all of a sudden, she's standing at the door of her room with all of her clothes back on, just there. Apparently, she was hungry, so they got her food, and while she ate, the old woman talked to the staff a little bit in her room, but then she told her nurse she was tired and wanted to lie back down. Within 30 minutes, she was dead. This surge of energy is called rallying before death, and it's not uncommon, but it's super unnerving, just like this Redditor said, and it's just unnerving to see so much life in a person before death. Scary.
Now at number 7 is Speak Back to Me. Now this story comes from a travel nurse called Courtney, and if you don't know what a travel nurse is, it's basically a nurse that travels across the country and works at a new hospital every 13 weeks. Now Courtney shared that she was working at an ICU at the time, and she had a patient there that would only repeat what was said to her and say nothing else. Now that day Courtney was with her all night, and she started telling her all the ways she had apparently died, saying things like, I died because I took too much insulin, I died because of narcotic overdose, I died on a sunny Sunday afternoon, and so on. Now Courtney kind of brushed it all off as the patient was troubled, but then she looked up at the ceiling and said they're all still here. At that point Courtney was like, I'm gonna up the hell out of here, and ran out of the room. If that was me, I'd be like, Medicate, honey. I'm not here to be hearing you talk about the ghosts of death's past. I'm here to do my job and then leave. She further shared that once she was caring for a blind patient who continuously asked her what time it was all night. She left and came back a while later to check in on her, and all the patient said was it's the witching hour. Court looked at the time, saw it was 3:33 AM and walked out. And hopefully never returned, because I sure damn would have not.
Alright, on to number 6, a shriek and a goat man. Now, this isn't the shrieking goat like that Taylor Swift cover. This is a story that comes from the mother of Danger Moose, or Danger M-U-U-S, on Reddit. She was on night shift, the mother, in a hospital in Arizona going room to room when an old lady told her about a goat man trying to get through the doors. This woman was an insomniac, so the mother didn't think anything of it. Then, a blood-curdling shriek rang out that people heard all around the hospital. People were freaked out, and then a few looked out the windows where they found hoof marks by the doors and windows, with no trails leading to or from them. That insomniac clearly knew something was up, and it must have been the goat man causing that shriek, right? Either himself or through nefarious means?
Filling our number 5 slot is the hallucination. Now this one's from Reddit user Whites42, who worked as an ICU nurse. She shared that a woman in her 20s had come in with serious cardiac abnormalities and then abruptly went into respiratory distress. She was put on a ventilator and was sedated just enough to keep her lucid. She could nod to answer questions, and that's all they really needed from her at the time. Now a few nights later, the patient in the room next to her has died, but the body was yet to be taken to the morgue. Now the girl's room door was closed and the male patient's curtain was drawn, so they never met nor did they see each other. The nurse went to check in on the woman and she looked like she was about to die, like she was in pure panic mode, and the nurse asked her if she was cold, were you in pain, are you warm, and she said no to everything. She then asked if she saw something and she started nodding aggressively. And mind you, just because she was sedated that doesn't mean she was hallucinating, like she wasn't. She started probing and asking questions to try and figure out what she was seeing, and she found out that the patient was seeing a Caucasian bald man missing his left arm. The nurse then freaked out when she realized the patient was seeing the ghost of the man who had died in the room next to her without ever actually seeing him. Okay.
At number 4, followed by death. This comes from another deleted account on Reddit. A staff member at a skilled nursing facility was typically working in the Alzheimer's ward and had a troubling string of experiences. First, they heard someone shuffle behind them, and then they feel someone put a hand on their shoulder while they're in a linen closet. So when they turn around, they see no one there and the door is still closed, so it was a bit freaky. Then, another lady began to complain to them for 2 weeks straight every night that a man was coming into her room at night. That being in the Alzheimer's ward, the author of this post didn't take it too seriously, saying they'd check in on her throughout the night. At the end of the 2 weeks of complaining, the staff member asked what the man looked like, just out of curiosity. The woman said, "He's real handsome and wears a black suit. Oh, he's right behind you now, honey," which justifiably freaked the writer of this story out. There was no one behind them, and as for the old lady, she died the next night in her sleep. So was the person in the suit death following them? Is that what they felt with their hand on the shoulder on the hand? I leave it to you.
At number 3 is the Grim Reaper. Now this one's from Redditor Scary Kerry 91476, and boy oh boy are you guys not ready for this one. So Kerry is an intensive care nurse, and she shared that back in 1999 she was in a 12-bedded ITU in London. She was in charge of the nurses station and she looked up to see a man coming through the double doors of the unit. And that image just stuck in her mind even 20 years later. It was like he had been plucked out of 1974 and dropped into 1999. He was wearing cord pants, a check shirt with a patterned tank top on top, and platform shoes. He looked about 30 years old and he just very calmly walked towards the bay of patients. Now Kerry had no idea who he was, so she asked him and he responded by nodding and then just continued walking. Alright then. He went and stopped at the end of a patient's bed and just looked at them. He didn't touch them, there was no contact, he just made eye contact. The patient was sick but very stable, but as the man was looking at them, they suddenly started deteriorating in front of Kerry's eyes. Staff rushed over to assist him and they were just acting like the man wasn't even there. And with that being said, he exited as calmly as he had come in. The patient ended up dying and Kerry asked the assisting staff who the man was, and none of them had even seen him or remembered anything any man even walking in that day. So Kerry thoroughly believed that she saw the Grim Reaper at work that day. And Kerry, I bloody agree with you.
At number 2, we have a C-section nightmare. It comes from P as in Peter on Reddit, who had a traumatizing experience while getting a C-section. She said that when the doctors were preparing to close her, she had blood splash on her face. Her own blood. She wrote that one of the doctors working on her must have dropped one of her organs. Like, hello? This woman was simultaneously giving life and being reminded that hers is fragile. She at least had a good attitude about it because she said her family got their money's worth from the anesthesiologist who wiped the blood from her face and glasses. But that's an organ falling and splash. I don't know how they are not super traumatized by this, but that's the miracle of life, ladies and gentlemen.
And last but not least, at our number 1 spot is the repetition. Now this one's from Redditor Cam Brewer, who was a 4th year nursing student when this happened to them. She was sitting for a 28-year-old woman who was going through alcohol withdrawal, and it was the 3rd day, which is scientifically the worst. And sitting is basically when you sit by a patient that could be dangerous to themselves or others, and this woman was fully restrained, like hands and feet were bound to the bed. She was shouting racial slurs at the nurse and spitting on her, and after a while started straight up hallucinating. She thought she was in her car driving with her 2 kids in the back, and she kept begging the nurse to take the wheel. She then explained the car crash in vivid detail, saying that her son had died. She kept crying and apologizing and repeatedly kept asking the nurse to hand her the body of her dead son. She was sedated, and when that wore off, the same hallucinations happened again. The same scenario happened 8 times in this woman's 12-hour shift, and after hearing it enough times, she realized it wasn't a hallucination at all. This was something that she had actually done but was replaying in her mind in her delirious state. Can you imagine being so delirious that like you're hallucinating a car crash where you killed your 7-year-old son, but it's not hallucination, it's real? Nope.
Alright everyone, that's our top 10 scary hospital horror stories, and I always say, in general, I never want to be in a hospital because that generally means either someone I know or myself are sick, but these stories kind of seal the deal for me. I'm like, no.
I feel like I'm fine, like my parents are doctors, so I feel like I've had to spend a lot of time in hospital, so I'm like, hey, you brother over there, but like after this I'm like, maybe not.
Yeah, maybe. Props to anyone in a medical profession, like,
kudos to you.
Yeah, you got it.
Going through this.
Yeah, thank you. Tell us what spooked you the most down below, and give us a like and subscribe if you want to see more abs and aims.
Crew.
It's the crew. Peace out. Bye. We out.
And go.
Really rock until infinity. Get it.
Goodbye guys. And scene.